Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on your time zone. This is Mr. Spycat, and today we are going to be looking at the Saturn IB rocket. If the thumbnail and title don't bring that picture to your mind, then you probably shouldn't be watching the video. Though actually you might learn a few facts about the Saturn IB. The Saturn IB prepared the data and knowledge of the Saturn rocket so that the missions for the Apollo could go ahead. It was only ever flown with people on it 4 times, and one wasn't technically flown. Apollo 1 and the 3 times to Skylab. So this rocket did work. It worked very well. Not sure what else to talk about it. As you can see, we are starting to get to max Q, so I lowered down the throttle a bit. And then I actually had a bit of problem getting into orbit later on. I found my apoapsis was going up when I was pointing prograde, and my periapsis was going down. So I turned around to anti-normal, I think I did. Or was it radially? And I think it might have been actually. Anyway, you can see our gravity turn is turning quite well. We are now at 25,000 meters. The rockets, we started to get a little ballistic trajectory here, which was totally unplanned, so I lowered down the thrust. And of course, I've actually gone the thrust up a bit for that. Now, the Saturn IB did not take humans to the moon. It had 2 stages. It had the first stage, which was actually really interesting to look at. It was comprised of Jupiter C and Mercury Redstone fuel tanks, which is the white and black tanks on the side. The second stage was rather powerful, getting it into orbit, which the first stage could not do. The launch escape tower was basically the same as the Apollo missions. As you can see it jettisoning here. I had to turn the engines off because if I was trying to jettison it with the engines on, it would be so fast that even the launch escape tower wasn't being able to push it out. At this point I realised something was wrong. My apoapsis was too high, my periapsis was getting low. So I decided to turn around. But I had to start moving my command module. Now, the command module is entirely and totally accurate. I did get the antennas and everything, but the service module, I took the top bit and turned that into sort of an electronics module. I didn't have a piece that looked completely white that was a fuel tank under it, so I ended up going for a small orange tank, which I think worked quite well. Originally I built it so that the second stage is the same size as the first, and then I had a look at a picture of it and it didn't look like that at all. So I continued building it, and yeah. So this isn't actually going to dock with anything, it just goes into space. The real mission, I should say, Apollo 1, would have most likely just gone into orbit. It wouldn't have done any EVA fancy docking stuff. But I completely ignored that since I was making this module and this playthrough. So I decided to take the Kerbals on EVA. All 3 of them, to be totally honest. I'm actually getting a bit better at controlling my Kerbals. I have a really bad habit of controlling them so far from the spaceship they can't get back, which I think I could probably get back from now, but I couldn't then. Sorry if you find me over talkative. You can probably mute me and put on music if you want. Anyway, we have just touched down, knocked against the service module. If the only reason Apollo 1, if it hadn't had a ground problem, would have gone on a spacewalk would have been if the part of the service module got damaged and it was repairable in a spacewalk. They might have had it planned, but because of the fact that it was basically just a test, really, they didn't get it. For some reason, I keep feeling my tongue wanting to say Soyuz 1 because I've been looking at the Soyuz missions quite a bit recently. Did you know there were 40 Soyuz missions and then there were T-series Soyuz missions? Probably didn't, and that was probably not a fact you needed to know, but anyway. As you can see, I was seeing if you could get in through the front docking port of the spacecraft, which I discovered you can't. It's totally impossible. Incidentally, just doing a test here. 1, 2, 3, testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. I now have a new microphone, so instead of having to speak to my computer, I can speak normally, and because I've got a new set of headphones, which means I can talk into the headphones, and that does the same thing. So it's sort of like a commentator's headphones. Goodness, that I am commentating a video. Anyway, you can see this is Bob Kerman on an EVA currently. He's currently facing Earth, which is by his EVA portrait, which is something new with the Breaking Ground DLC, which I've got. Brought, I should say. It costs, I can't remember how much it costs, but anyway. So it all works quite well. I'm struggling to fit. The farthest I've ever been is the moon, and I haven't gone there since last year, so I probably need to do another lunar mission. Mana mission? Lunar mission? I'll look up what that's called. Anyway, as you can see, I enjoyed doing this. No, it's the next Kerbal I did it with anyway. So finally I got Valentina Kerman out on a spacewalk. And I'm getting much better at controlling my Kerbals, as you can see. So at this point you can vaguely see Valentina Kerman in the EVA portrait, because Valentina is now facing the sun. Because I hadn't been over this side, I found it very interesting to see what was over here. After this, I planned on visiting the engine bell, or in other words, the circular thing at the back of the spacecraft. I used to think that was this EVA. Anyway. So you can move along this quite well. Now the thing with the Apollo is the Apollo missions is that they either went to the moon, round the moon, or tested things in Earth orbit. Actually, now that I think about it, Apollo 7 launched on a Saturn IB, and Apollo 9 launched on a Saturn IB. Of course, it had a slightly compromised engine fairing, because of course it needed to hold the lunar lander so that they could test it. Apollo 10 was a Saturn 5. It got about 2 meters from the moon purposely, and then purposely left the area. So we've got all my Kerbals docked. I'm now going to show you how manoeuvrable I made this spacecraft by adding too many RCS thrusters and forgetting how much minimum propellant I had. Anyway, at this point I decided it was probably time that I should start heading home. So I went retrograde, I think. I had a very good reaction wheel on this, so it worked quite well. And I actually aligned myself using the reaction wheel. I didn't use the SAS hold to the wheel thing. I did that visually from the control wheel. Anyway, I'm just about to fire the engine. As you can see, I had to turn around a bit. Or have I fired the engine anyway? I'm sending back a final report. And forgot to send us back to Earth. Anyway, so now I'm sending it back to Kerbin. Not Earth, that's the wrong planet. And here sped up a bit and decided to close the antenna. So there goes the antenna, and the service module can now be jettisoned. Though I decided to hold that for a little bit. And here is where having this drove me nuts. I ended up I actually purposely decided to start heading prograde, not retrograde, towards the Earth, Kerbin, and just before re-entry. But I managed to get it round before 700 meters, which is basically it's the common line of Kerbin. So you can if you get into orbit any lower than that, you can assume you're going to fall down pretty quickly. And higher than that is probably what you want. So I'm re-entering the atmosphere now, which was a very long and laborious process. I am actually showing you this in real-time speed, apart from the time warp that happens in-game. So that's what's happening. I found it a little nerve-wracking. Well, that's not nerve-wracking, but I find it a little nerve-wracking that re-entry fumes appear to be coming out of the docking port. If I show you it again on this, hang on, you can see they're coming out of the docking port as well. And to me that just looks scary. Why would there be fumes coming out of the docking port? Maybe it's how it actually re-entered. I have no idea how a spacecraft properly re-enter. Anyway, I find re-entering the atmosphere the easiest part of the mission, because I can just sit back and relax and look at the periapsis and hope it hasn't bounced. At this point I realised, right, I definitely haven't bounced because my apoapsis is now below the common line of Kerbin. So as you can see, I've stopped re-entering the atmosphere. I discovered it was a bit dark, so I'm hoping YouTube doesn't make this too dark. I've heard that can be the case. As you can see, I've deployed the parachutes. They haven't fully deployed yet, but they have deployed. So now I'm going time warp. So that was when I thought they should be deploying, but they didn't. It was 10,000 meters below that, but anyway. So starting to slow down. 3, 2, 1. Parachute fully deploys. At this point, the Kerbals can sit back and enjoy the ride down, which is what they say they should have done on the other missions to space. Anyway, I have no idea where all the stages to this landed. I presume the space junk probably went to Earth, and the second stage probably went far out to space and all that stuff. Probably went far out to space, and then come in because my periapsis was about 10 kilometers up, and that's not far enough to get into orbit. Anyway, as you can see, I'm at 100 kilometers, 50 meters, sorry, not kilometers, 10, and we have splashdown on the ocean. At this point I could end the video, but I decided to wait until this morning so that I could get an arty sunrise picture. I basically know that once the moon started coming up from the start of the video, that I'm practically at sunrise. So I launched in sunrise, and the very next day I landed in sunrise. Though technically I'm not even sure it was a day, something more like half an hour in space, but anyway. So now all the Kerbals are back inside the cabin, apart from this one, which I decided to take his helmet off, and then discovered that once they're back inside the cabin, their helmets are automatically off, so I didn't need to do that, but anyway. So a nice cinematic view